Hey, welcome to 23 Degrees Sideways. We're doing coffee again. We're going to talk a little bit more about the liveaboard life. This one's not specifically as much about marinas as it is about boat types. And, I'm going to get back and finish the marina talk a little bit later on. There's still some more things to say about marina versus cruising versus anchor versus moorings, actually. I think living on a mooring is probably the ideal situation if you're going to be in one place, but we'll talk about that later. We're going to talk right now about airflow, mildew, mold, health, styles of boats. Right now, and I talk about this a lot because they're so cheap. Right now, sailboats are the thing. If you want to get onto a boat that may or may not be mobile, and you want to get on cheap, sailboats are the way to go. You can find power boats that are pretty inexpensive, but you're dealing with a bigger potential problem if you ever want to use the boat, because usually a really cheap power boat is going to have bad engines, multiple engines for the price. But sailboats are everywhere. Right now, you can go find one for free. Sometimes you can walk the docks. You can pay for back slip fees. They're, and this goes up from there. $10,000 will get you a really decent space for a sailboat. $20,000 will get you a decent sail away vessel if you're looking hard for a deal. At the $50,000, $60,000 range, you're looking at a whole different world. But we're going to keep the bohemian vibe going right now. Excuse my morning voice. I have a frog in my throat, apparently, for coffee this morning. So, the problem with sailboats is that a lot of your life is either literally at the waterline or below the waterline. They don't tend to have a lot of airflow, like big open windows, big open spaces. And so they can get a bit dank inside. There's nothing about smaller power boats that is exempt from this, because the V-berth will often be very low in the boat. And then you'll have storage, and sometimes your galley, your little kitchenette facilities will be down there as well. All of that stuff needs airflow. All of that stuff is going to be humid. All of that stuff is going to grow mildew on the walls if you're not careful. So you have to clean it a lot. And aside from the cleaning, the bleach, there's the cushions, and there's the dead air spaces. Sailboats, because of the shape and because of the way the lockers, storage shelves, cabinets are set up, have a lot of dead air space. And this is where the stuff really grows, where a little bit of moisture collects and a lot of mold or mildew collects. So you have to be really, really careful with a sailboat as far as that goes. And it could be much healthier for you if you're compromised to live in a taller, more open, more above the surface boat. There's ways to make a sailboat work. More ventilation, more fans, put in a couple extra hatches, put in some solar vents, open up those storage spaces. Take some of those doors off. A lot of them could be cubbies instead of cabinets. That'll help a lot. Air everything out. Don't pack the spaces too much, or if you do, pack them with dry bags and take them out. Air them out. It's a process. There's a process to living. You don't just sit on the couch and do nothing. If you're on an inland waterway or a protected waterway, obviously another answer is a houseboat. You can get those as hulls, which means you're still dealing with below the waterline. Although it's not as bad. You don't tend to sleep below the waterline, for example. Or you can deal with pontoons, which carry a lot less weight and have flotation issues and honestly have handling issues in rough seas, but you can put a what amounts to an RV trailer on top of pontoons, and you're still on a boat. You're on a houseboat, and you have all of the airflow you could possibly want, including downward airflow. Like you can open up vents on the bottom, and the air will fall out. That's a big deal when you're talking about things like gas fumes, propane fumes, but also just general airflow. It's why basements can be dank, but the first floor of a house won't be, because the air has somewhere to flow downward, out. It's not just stuck collecting. So a houseboat can be a good option, but you're not going to move it much. And this, again, it depends on your liveaboard style. If you don't want to move ever, fine, engineless houseboat, if you can afford one, because they tend to be much more expensive than cheap sailboats. So that's, it's a consideration. Look at that. If you are on a sailboat, maybe you should consider the pilot house, whether it's a soft or a hard pilot house Dodger, building up the top cockpit area so that it is more usable. I was thinking about that this morning and looking. I have a Dodger that is the right height for a coastal boat that has a very low step out of the cockpit, into the cockpit, out of the cabin. I have a very high step, so it basically knocks 16 inches off the height of my cover over there. And it's very hard to get in and out. It needs to be taller. And of course, if I'm going to replace it, I'm just going to replace it with a solid one, not a canvas one. So that's where you start looking at a pilot house. Things start to look a little different. And if you have that space up there, it's not really a cabin. It's kind of like a roofed screen porch. But you have a lot more living room, living space, airflow space that is above the water line. And that can help. That can be an immense help, especially for your health. You got to think about your breathing, your airflow, your air exchange, and those are really big deals. And just something to consider when you're out sailing, when you're out at sea, when you're dealing with wind every day, and your boat moves around, swings around to face the wind. When you're at anchor and you have all of your vents and everything, it's actually easier to keep things going, clean air exchange, than it is when you're at a marina, because you're kind of locked into one position. So that's something else to consider, but you are going to need accessory venting in a boat no matter what. In a sailboat, you're going to need the most. And you may have to clean out, rearrange, air out your storage spaces more often than you would think. Sailboats have look like they have less space than other kinds of boats sometimes. They really do have a lot of space, but it's different, and it's very confined and very susceptible to dead air. I'm kind of harping on this one because it's a really big deal. When you get to that, and you get to living in the cockpit, putting a boom tent on, putting up tarp covers, whatever it is, shade covers, make that as much your space as you can. Do what you need to do to make that comfortable. If you're at a dock or you're at anchor, you can put up stuff. You can put up your canvas top. You can put up sidewalls for privacy if you need them, or for rain protection. All of that is doable. You want to make it look neat, but it's all perfectly doable and very reasonable. That's pretty much it. I really want to talk about airflow, and the biggest solution on your sailboat is to use the deck as much as possible as a living space. That's really how that works. So I don't have much else. It's kind of a short coffee video for me. I'm going to make it in at 10 minutes. Keep your airflow going. Remember that sailboats are super cheap and you can make them work. And stay sideways.